as promised. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this celebration of Dalkey Archive Press and its authors. My name is James Crossley. I am the general manager of Madison Books in Seattle. Seattle, of course, is on the ancestral unceded lands of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish. You can learn more about the Duwamish and their struggle to gain federal recognition as a tribe at realrentduwamish.org, and we'll try to drop a link to that in the Q&A, so you can see that if you want to check that out.
Unfortunately, we can't drop links into the Q&A.
Oh, is that not even
Yeah.
as a host?
As host, we can't. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that just gets complicated then. We'll go look it up, people. realrentduwamish.org. Thanks to everyone, as I said, for being here at all, and thanks to those of you who contributed to BINC when you signed up for this. BINC is the Book Industry Charitable Foundation, and they do great work. And so we are going to be able to make a generous donation to them this evening on all of your behalfs. So I won't talk for more than a few minutes here about Dalkey, but Dalkey Archive is a very important to me, I mean, maybe the most important press. I probably wouldn't be a bookseller without them. In the long ago days, you know, not only before I had a white beard, before I had a beard of any kind, and I was haunting bookstores over and over again, going over and over the shelves, looking, is there anything new? Is there anything new? And looking back at the same old books over and over again, I realized that the ones that I was pulling off the shelf most often had the same colophon. I didn't know what that meant. What that word was or anything at the time, but that was the first time I noticed, a publisher has characteristics, has a taste, an aesthetic, and I could recognize that I would be interested in something that just had that name on it. Authors like Gilbert Sorrentino, Stanley Elkin, Juna Barnes, William Gass, Gertrude Stein, John Barth, we mentioned before, Ishmael Reed, Ricky DuCournay, Mikhail Ivaz, David Markson, Carol Mazo, Felipe Alfao, people like that. I could spend as much time talking about each of those books as any of the books that you're going to hear about tonight from the other booksellers who are here with us. And we're going to introduce those to you now. We're going to talk to the booksellers for a little bit about their favorite Dalkey backlist titles. Then we're going to hear from our authors tonight, and at the end of the evening, we'll hear from Chad Post from Dalkey about where things are headed next. But we'll kick things off with Josh Cook from Porter Square Books. Josh, you can tell us a little bit about you, the bookstore that you work at, and the book you want to talk about tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. James, thank you for organizing this, and Chad and all the others. Thank you for keeping Dalkey in the world and working. My name is Josh Cook. I'm a co-owner, marketing director, and bookseller at Porter Square Books in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is on the land of the Massachusetts people. And the book that I want to talk to you all about tonight is Eros, the Bittersweet by Anne Carson. There's a fundamental gap between one who desires and the one who is desired. The tension, the spark this gap creates is called Eros. As Carson explores this gap through her reading, translation, and interpretation of the Greek poet Sappho, we learn it's not the only gap of its kind. There is also an unbridgeable gap between the metaphor and what it is attempting to describe, between the signifier and the signified, between what is said and what is heard, between the ancient Greek that Sappho wrote and the English word bittersweet that we use today. This fundamental gap isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's probably one of those facts of life that is neither good nor bad, but Carson shows that if this gap is somehow closed, if the one who desires is somehow able to truly unify with the one who is desired, the spark of Eros will go out. And I think the same would apply for the spark of metaphor, the spark of translation, perhaps even the spark of language. It matters that we have to pass through something to say and to be heard. Eros the Bittersweet is a before and after book. You are a different reader after you've read it than you were before. And so we find ourselves in another one of those ands between one thing and another. The space we are no longer the reader who has not read Eros the Bittersweet, but have not yet become the reader who has read Eros the Bittersweet. Something alchemical is happening in that space. And there's really only one way to experience that alchemical, mushy middle and Eros tension space. And that's, of course, to start reading Eros the Bittersweet. So Eros the Bittersweet by Anne Carson. It's available at Porter Square Books, of course, at all of tonight's partners and at local bookstores throughout the country. So thank you all listening to my very hard sell on Eros the Bittersweet. And I'm so excited to hear from everyone else.
Great, thank you, Josh. And that book is available now. I think some of the ones we'll be talking about will be released shortly as part of Dalkey's Essentials series. So it's good to highlight the ones that you can start reading right this minute, the ones you might have to wait a little bit even after you order. I think that's the case with the book we'll hear about next from Lori from Interrobang. Lori, take it away.
You're on mute.
Still muted
Okay,
there. Lori.
now I'm not. Thank you. Thanks, James. Hi, my name is Lori Feathers, and I am a co-owner and the adult book buyer at Interrobang Books in Dallas, Texas. Really happy to join all of you tonight and to celebrate this fantastic publishing powerhouse, Dalkey Archive. And big thanks to Chad Post and to Will Evans for stepping up and saving this incredible publishing house for us, because the world would be a lot sadder place without these books. And I'm going to talk today about a book that is a cult classic and is certainly going to be, I think, one of the, if not the publishing event of 2023. And that is the reissue of Marguerite Young's Miss Mackintosh, My Darling. I have been waiting to read this book for years, and I finally broke down and bought a copy from a secondhand bookseller a few months back. This book is, it's really almost even difficult to describe how it just blows the top of your head off. It starts with the narrator on a bus, and the narrator is looking for her nursemaid, Miss Mackintosh. And what to say about the style of this writing? It's so fulsome, so chewy. You just kind of want to luxuriate in the descriptions. There's long lists of nouns and items. And what I found really kind of haunting about the book is there's a real Gothic element to the book. The narrator grows up in this weird, falling down, decrepit mansion on the coast of New England. And her mother is kind of in this opium-fueled dream state where nothing seems real or tangible or practical. And this poor girl has to grow up in this house without siblings, without a father, with only like maids and servants and other people who kind of let her mother kind of float around and imagine all these weird things. Her mother's confined to her bed. And the light of her life is this steady, stable Miss Mackintosh, who is hired to be her nursemaid and who is everything that her mother is not, very practical, capable, able, who thinks that you should always be using your hands and being industrious, and is so not the dreamer that her mother has been all of her life. And I kind of compare it to another book that is an all-time favorite of mine. And I know probably is a lot of the other booksellers here. It reminds me a lot of Duck's Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann, not so much in the subject matter, but in this style of writing and how you almost feel like you get into this rhythm that the prose just goes on and on. Some of the sentences are very long, and it's also quite repetitive, like Ducks Newburyport. But I can't tell you how excited I am about this big, fabulous, fat novel, and how so very much I can't wait to have it on our shelves and put it in people's hands, because it is just one of the most magnificent things I've ever read.
High praise indeed. And I would second those recommendations. I did read it years ago when it was first out from Dalkey. And it's quite a thing. He said, like Ducks Newburyport, and not like too many other things. It was one of my favorites. I'm very glad that it's going to be out in a single volume, which easier to deal with if you've got the strength to hold it. But I was saying to Lori earlier, it's one of my favorite 2-volume releases from Dalkey, because back in the days when they had author photos, black and white author photos on the cover, the first volume had this great photo of her as looking like a teenager with this sort of blank, innocent expression on her face, little, chopped bangs and a bob. And the second volume on the cover, same haircut, same woman, but looking about 50 years older, wearied, leaning with her head down on the massive manuscript that was that book. So you saw the whole thing come to be just in those photos. Great one. Who's up next? Amanda, I think it's your turn. Tell us about you and your book. After you unmute yourself, of course.
I'm Amanda. Been doing this for 3 years now. I work at Warwick's, which is the nation's oldest family-owned and operated bookstore. We're now on our 4th generation owner, a woman, which is awesome. I'm the marketing coordinator there, and beaming in from Kumi Island. And I want to tell you a story about, first, when I used to work at the UC San Diego bookstore. We had this customer start coming in, and she was basically any bookseller's dream customer. She was sweet and kind and excited and grateful for all the things that booksellers do for the community, merely by existing, and then some. And I remember one year even, she was waiting at the doors to be let in on Independent Bookstore Day, and she stayed the whole day. And she is an amazing erudite reader, and she was curious about what we were reading as well as what we wanted to recommend to her. So she found out that I really appreciated the short story form, and especially love Edgar Allan Poe and Ray Bradbury, and that I am generally just a sucker for good metafiction. She got very excited and bubbled over with recommendations and left, and then came back maybe a week later. And she had taken these craft paper moleskin, not notebooks, moleskin, and had pasted in page by page copies of stories that she wanted me to read. She'd done 2 of these for me. And the first introductory page from Calvino's Invisible Cities is The Barnum Museum by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Stephen Millhauser. So after reading that title story, I procured the entire collection. So the book I'm talking about tonight is The Barnum Museum. These are brilliant short stories, all quite strange or very strange, and often unsettling. So in that, Millhauser messes with magical realism in the same creepy way as Poe and Bradbury, where it's it seems like a normal enough world, and then the way you're looking at it starts to get real weird. And this also includes a lot of heartbreaking and painful domestic fiction. He's working with diaphanous ideas. The New York Times, when they were talking about his Pulitzer Prize win, describes a typical Millhauser book as reflecting the author's obsession with popular culture, with labyrinths and dreams, and portraying a world in which the real and the fabricated have become intermingled. He also goes into these fugue states of description with really hypnotic lists and imagery of concrete things for lines and lines that feels like staring at Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, or maybe art by Escher. His work has been compared to Fabergé eggs in that way. Sometimes he paints super exquisitely precise images that are grounded in meticulous details that leave nothing to the imagination, but somehow also simultaneously induces almost a hallucinatory state. The first story is a story of a family playing Clue. And as we are treated to looking at the board, we also get intermingled stories from the Clue characters. So the viewpoint switches between the people playing the game and the people in the game. And the last story, The Illusionist, actually became the basis of a movie starring Ed Norton, Paul Giamatti, and Jessica Biel, which by all accounts, Rotten Tomatoes, is a pretty solid movie. So there's a sort of oblique Hollywood endorsement for Stephen Millhauser. So if you are someone who enjoys the sort of quantum entanglements of writing, thinking about the problems of the observer effect that happen whenever you try to make art, I would recommend Stephen Millhauser. In the title story, he says about the museum, the Barnum Museum, is it that the endless halls and doorways of our museum seem to tease us with a mystery, to promise perpetually a revelation that never comes? If so, then it is a revelation we are pleased to be spared. I do want to mention a caveat though, because in rereading, I realized that the first story in the collection does have a problematic and potentially upsetting sexual encounter between Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard. So yeah, there's I just wanted to mention that content warning.
That is not where I thought that sentence was going.
But I find this a very entrancing and rewarding collection of short stories. So if you like short stories and magical realism, he's definitely been compared to Borges as well.
A good board game trigger warning, definitely. Let's see who else. Next, we have Javier. What have you got for us, Javier?
You're on mute.
I think he can't unmute, James.
Try unmuting now, Javier.
There we go. Thanks, James. Technical glitches gone. I'm Javier Ramirez, co-owner of Exile and Bookville in Chicago, Illinois. I do everything here, I guess, of a co-owner. We're two people, buyers, owners, stalkers, STOCKERS, and event coordinators. Yeah, this is the store behind me. It is very dark here today and very cold. And I'll be talking about Our Dead World by Liliana Kalanzi, translated by Jessica Sikiata. Before I do that, I want to say that I'm very happy to be here to celebrate Dalkey, and would like to take a minute to thank James for putting this together and Spencer for being our technical director. It's an honor to be included with such bookseller royalty tonight as well. Looking forward to hearing Ben Slotky and Curtis White discuss Ben's current Dalkey novel, An Evening of Romantic Lovemaking, And finally, for what it's worth, I want to thank Chad Post for, well, being Chad Post. I met Chad 20 years ago here in Chicago at a rep night. And he, it's crazy to see that ruddy-cheeked young man become the person he's become today. So thanks, Chad. Our Dead World comes in at a cool 105 pages, and I felt a sense of dread reading each and every one of those pages. A couple of the stories had me reading with my back to the wall and a constant chill up my spine. The 8 stories will dig deep into your psyche and lodge there long after you've turned the last page. Although this short collection is solid throughout, I have to say that Meteorite and Cannibal are standouts for me. They both leave you a bit disoriented, as Liliana has you looking over here while sneak up from another angle of the story. It's truly magnificent. Shop your local indie and get your hands on a copy. Toot sweet. We have a couple here, but I'm sure you can find copies in everyone's stores here tonight. I also want to give a shout out to Michael Zapata, author of the incredible Lost Book of Adana Moreau, he turned me on to this collection last year. So thanks, Mike. He's not here, but I'm sure you can hear him in his dreams. Thanks, everyone. You guys are awesome. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Javier. That was, yeah, I promised people when I told them about this that they were going to hear about fantastic books that they'd never heard of before. And I didn't think that would be the case for me, since I've been a Dalkey Archive superfan for years. And Javier, yours was one that I thought, yep, that hadn't been on my radar. Somehow I missed that one. So I'm very glad that you brought that to my attention and everyone's attention. So next we've got Spencer, who's been a real trooper being here tonight and helping put this together. So Spencer, what have you got for us?
I have, well, first of all, thank you, James. James, thank you so much for putting this together. This is so much fun. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time. My name's Spencer. I'm the author events manager at Third Place Books. We have 3 stores in the Seattle metro area, up in Lake Forest Park, the Ravenna neighborhood of Seattle, and the Seward Park neighborhood of Seattle. I love being a bookseller here. We have, what, James, like 30 independent bookstores in the Seattle metro area, maybe a bit so-and-so, depends on the year. It's a really vibrant bookselling community up here in the Pacific Northwest. And there's so many wonderful booksellers. So I'm really happy to be a part of this tonight. But yeah, I am talking about, if you know anything about me, it is that Jan Fasse's Septology is probably one of the most important books to me in the last 5 years, I'd say. And so I was really excited to get the chance to talk about Trilogy, which has been reissued as part of the Dalkey Essential series. Trilogy is a collection of 3 books, Wakefulness, Olav's Dream, and Weariness, that then Dalkey printed together in this translation by Maybrit Ackerholt. I mean, all in all, it is really just a reminder of all the things that I love about Septology and Damien Searle's translation of Septology. I think one of the most amazing things about Jan Fasse's translators across the board is that they're able to translate him so consistently. It feels like you're reading the same translation across books occasionally. I mean, Trilogy has kind of this strange sort of sickly sweet saccharine love story at first, about this couple, the 17-year-old couple, Asla and Alita. And if you're hearing Asla and you're thinking, isn't that a character in Septology? Yeah, you're right. The name, Fosse has a thing about names where he reuses them in different novels. They're obviously different characters, but he is a writer very much obsessed with names and identity and what those things means, and transmuting those things across books and kind of like a universe of his own. But they're the 17-year-old couple. They start off the novel. They're wandering around Norway. They're looking for a place to stay. They're homeless and they're wanderers. And Alita is pregnant and they're unmarried, so they're turned away from a lot of places. And it turns into this very strange situation in which suddenly violence strikes, and I won't spoil anything else, but it turns from being a very sickly sweet saccharine love story into something much darker. And yeah, I think it's like I said, trilogy is very much a reminder of why I love septology, and that is it's very accessible. Fosse is not a pretentious writer by any means, even though the sentences can kind of look intimidating to kind of at an average reader's glance. The diction is very soft. He's melancholy, but also like really believes, like really genuinely believes in love. Like there's this kind of I think Merve Emre keeps talking in her reviews and recommendations for septology about how, like, you know, septology is like she feels close to God when she reads it, which kind of sounds like a lot at first, but I think when you read it, there's a certain rhythm to the prose, and there's a certain like appreciation of holiness that that is unlike anything else I've ever read. It's genuine. It doesn't come from a place of irony. It's not displaced. I love this edition too, because there is kind of a classic like Dalkey archive, like copy editing issues. There are a few like missing page numbers in the middle of the book. Yeah, I think yeah, but I love this book, especially if you've read septology and you loved that. I think you'll really appreciate the darkness that this has in store.
Thanks, Spencer. That's great. We were to have with us this evening Stephen Sparks from Point Reyes Books, but he's a late scratch. He's home with a sick kid and was able to attend. So yeah, there's a lot of flu and COVID and RSV going around, so keep wearing your masks, people. You might have helped Stephen be here with us, but anyway, he was going to mention the log of the SS Mrs. Ungenstein by Stanley Crawford. Great Dalkey book from back in the day. Crawford's a great writer and certainly the greatest garlic farmer in literature. Yeah, you can look up information about him. He's great. Look up the books. I won't go into detail about it because Stephen would have done a much better job than I would, but I do want to make sure that's on our list for the things that we want to talk about tonight. So we'll sort of shift gears here from bookseller to book producers. We have with us special guest tonight, Curtis White, first of all, who is an essayist and author who has spent most of his career writing experimental fiction, much of it published by Dalkey Archive Press, but he has turned recently to writing books of social criticism. He is a big fan, however, of a new novel that we have mentioned earlier, An Evening of Romantic Lovemaking by Ben Slotky, which is called both the funniest and one of the saddest novels I've ever read. Ben Slotky is also the author of the story collection Red Hot Dogs, White Gravy, and he's our headliner tonight. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Curtis, for being here. Really want to hear more about the book, and so we'll let you guys chat for a bit.
Sounds good. Hello? What happened to everybody?
Ben,
All right, Ben, you should be able to unmute.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me, Kurt? Lauren?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Where'd
Can you hear
everybody
me?
go? They left.
Am I on?
Well, we just want to leave the floor to you guys, but we're still here. We don't want to draw focus.
I
Like I
got you.
said, you're the star.
So I can be seen now, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I can't see me, but that's good.
You look great.
Before we get started, I think I haven't heard this name yet this evening, and I think it should be heard, which is my old dear friend John O'Brien, who started this press and ran it for nearly 40 years before he passed just a little over 2 years ago. And he and I taught at Illinois State University for at least 10, 15 years. And I was a director of the board, chair of the board for the press for a number of years. And he and I worked very closely together on a lot of projects, including unhappily moving the press here and there when it got into trouble with one administrator or another. At any rate, hats off to John O'Brien. I hope he's thriving and pissing people off wherever he is. But we're here to introduce a new Dalkey writer, Ben Slotky, and a new book. Um, and I thought, Ben, that we would have you say something about what we call the ground situation in the business, you know? Say something about the ground situation of your novel, and then read a bit from An Evening of Romantic Lovemaking.
I'd love to. You know, I love talking about ground situations.
Huh?
You know how I love talking about ground situations.
Yeah, right.
Got me going. Thank you very much. And An Evening of Romantic Lovemaking is the story of a guy who is lost everything. He's lost his livelihood. He's lost his family. He's lost his business. He's lost his sense of purpose, of meaning, perhaps his mind. And what he's doing, he has renovated a building, turned it into a movie theater. The night before he's going to lose the building, he goes into the theater, takes everybody hostage, and goes on a rant. And the result is An Evening of Romantic Lovemaking. Not a lot of lovemaking in it, but that's sort of the ground here. I should read?
Yeah.
Right. From this? No, I'm kidding. All right, I'm gonna read a little bit from the beginning here. And let me know if you can't hear me. Let's see. Start right out here. All right. It's funny, it is. And is everybody back from the bathroom or wherever? Oh my goodness, we got everybody here present, I'm guessing accounted for. Good, because I'm only going to do this once. I'm sorry about that up there, that thing with the picture. I'm not sure what that was. Something went wrong. How many do we have here tonight? Looks out, counts. Not a big crowd. Doesn't look like a big one. Not too surprising. Slowly clasps hands in front of chest. Like 7? That's who's here. Is that right? And who am I asking? Shrugs laughs. Folks, and I'm sorry, and we'll get started in a second, I promise. Some technical difficulties. It looks like nothing to worry about, And it's nice here, you know, down here on stage. I never stand here, I don't. Quick, sad smile. Wow, this is nice. And here we are. It's brighter up here than I thought. I can't see anything. Hands shielding eyes looking out. Tiny smile quick. There's so much stuff to get to. And okay, before we get back to it, maybe a little bit about me. Clasped hands. Don't worry, we'll get back to whatever it is, what we were doing. But a little bit about me. I have 6 children. I'm married. And yeah, I built this place right here. Did it a few years back. Renovated the whole. And thank you. That's very kind. Smiles quick fake bow. This is mine. This was. And you probably knew that already. May have seen or heard, and this is good. This is great. This is hands clasping. Clasps hands, paces. This is pacing, and I think tonight we're going to answer a lot of questions. Looks out quizzically. What's that, ma'am? He didn't ask any questions. Laughs. That's good. That is. I mean, you bring up a good point, even though you didn't. Pacing, walking across stage. But no, I think a lot of questions are going to be answered tonight. I declare, and I hope at least they are. And I know what they say about hope. They say hope in one hand and shit in the other. See which one fills up faster. Scrunches up face, gives quizzical look. What was that? Who says that? Who said that? Looking out, surprised. Great question, ma'am. They say that. They do. My grandmother said that. We'll talk about her later. We have plenty of time, so much time, plenty of grandma time. I say that now about hoping and shitting, ma'am, and I stopped, didn't I? Yeah, now I'm talking about something else, I think, aren't I? But no, I do. I say it to my kids, except I say crap or poop. That's the only difference between what she said and what I say, and I'm saying right now. Pauses, looks around, admiringly nodding. And I'm scrambling here, I am. I'll admit it. I have no idea how much time I've got before the cops come, because they almost have to, don't they? Ma'am? Tilts head, leans in. Don't the cops come in a situation like this? Don't they have to, sir? When you take hostages? Quick shake of head. Don't the cops always come when shit like this happens? A hostage situation? An evening of romantic what again? Rub stomach, paces. I read a lot of cop stories, lots of detective stories, ma'am. They always come, the cops do. Smiles, walks. You know what'd be fun, ma'am? Writing a detective story. Just a really detailed, really intricate plot, but accessible, you know, like you get it. You're never lost. Wouldn't that be great, ma'am? Slowly shakes head, small smile. I'd love to write a detective story, a crime story. And that's a little bit about me, I guess, but not really. I can't do it, though. I've tried. There are plots and pacing and red herrings and MacGuffins and none of it, ma'am. I'm good at none of it. And this may be pointless right now. I get that. It may be pointless like a new pencil, but how am I supposed to know, you know? I'm just getting this all out there, all of it. I'm declaring. And in those detective novels that I read, ma'am, those detective stories that I read but can't write, sometimes they call the lieutenants Lou. Stops, smiles. Think about that for a second. Lou. I love that. I love it so much. And I can't tell you why. Not really. I can't answer that. I don't know what the words are. Looks around. I've got to be here somewhere. Like, what if it was the answer to a really hard crossword puzzle? Like, I'm supposed to be able to know how to describe the feeling of how I feel when I read about people calling lieutenants Lou. That may or may not be important, may or may not be something I'm going to need to account for later on. I don't know. I don't know. But you know what I do know, ma'am? What I can guarantee, sir, what I can goddamn declare? It's funny, this whole thing is, we're going to have, oh gosh, we're going to have a good time. And I kind of laugh right there just a little because it's true. It's true, we are. Don't worry, seriously, you'll be fine. We all will be. We're going to laugh and laugh. But before we do that, I just want to lay some ground rules, like on what we're going to see. And I could pretend that there was something wrong with the film, right, man? With the projector from before. Like I could pretend like, oh, you all came in to see a movie and you sat down and started watching. Then there was like some technical difficulty, a glitch, a screw up, the film melted or the bulb burned out or something. And that's why I'm down here talking now. This could be the plot. This could be the narrative structure or whatever, but that's not what we're doing here, is it? And you kind of knew that already, didn't you? Smiles, tries to wink. Now we're not doing that. It's going to get deep. We're going to answer the big questions. And it's not all going to be serious stuff. Don't be alarmed. It's fun. It's an evening of romantic lovemaking. I saw that look on your face, sir. You're like, what's all this about deep questions or whatever the fuck? I thought this was about lovemaking. That's what the sign out there says. No, you're right. You're right. And it does. It says so right there. Truth in advertising, what have you. Still pacing. It's not going to be all serious, but we're going to answer some big questions. For example, how did we get here? Stops, waves hands around. What are we doing? What are we talking about? What does any of this have to do with otters? Squints eyes, scrunches face like reading a sign at a distance. These questions will be answered. What happens after you lose everything and everything leaves you? Shrugs shoulders. What does that sound like? How does that feel? Stops, smiles. Ma'am, I can answer that question. Like I can answer that question. Smiles, exhales, wipes brow with hand. It's exciting, right? How do you tie all that in with an otter? An otter, man? Can you make that fit? Can you? Can I get out of here? Will I be killed? These are all questions, man, that I promise we'll get into. And I know, stops, looks down, shakes head, dejected. I know what you're thinking, smiles. I know that a lot of comedians are going to come, they're going to be like, we're going to talk about these things, and they skirt around them. They boot and capri pants around these issues. I know that. And what's that now? Hand to ear, head cocked. What are we doing now? A comedian? Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's what this is going to be. This makes sense. Paces. I was a lot of things before. Now I'm this. I guess let's check off things I've been, shall we? Looks out at audience, shields eyes with a hand holding a gun. Who's up for a little checking things off and off-checking and accounting, a declaration? Shrugs. Okay, let's see. I've been a businessman, right? An entrepreneur, which is fun to say, right? Check. That didn't pan out too well. Leans in, stage whispers. Bankruptcy. Shh. Stands back up. I've been a husband, right? A father, a good person who does things husbands and fathers do. Check. Leans back in, shakes head, purses lip, stage whispers. That didn't work out too well. I am totally alone, man. There's nobody here. Stands back, shakes it off, centers himself. No, but I've tried all that. I've been all those things, and this is where it's led me. Looks around, surprised. Here? No, but I've been over this a bunch. I think I'm going to frame it like this. Now that it's all over, I'm going to act like I'm a comedian, right? Why not? Have fun, lovemaking. And it's one night only, and it's one last time, so we'll give it a shot, right? I've always wanted to do it, to give it a shot. Waves gun in air, smiles. And if it's not going to be tonight, then when the hell is it going to be,
Brilliant. I love the way that you have appropriated the stand-up
Thank you,
comedian.
Spencer.
Huh?
Spencer was clapping. He took himself off the video and clapped. Meant a lot. Not saying anything to you two. Go ahead.
What are you doing?
Spencer, he was muted and then he got on the video and he gave me a little clap. It was nice to see. Yes.
I'm sorry to cause confusion. I
It's all right.
didn't mean to confuse anyone.
There
I
you
just
go. No,
I
it's
know
fine. It's
how
fine
it
now.
feels
Do
to
it.
like read to a mute audience where you
Exactly.
read something brilliant and
I
then
just assume
no
that
one
I'm doing
tells you how
really
brilliant
well.
you are.
Here's
Exactly.
what I think we should let the author be surreal and the audience behave themselves, a little normality out there in the audience.
Yeah, I don't need any.
One of the basic thing that I admire about the book is the way that you take stand-up comedy and twist it into this sort of surreal, off the rails, off the hinges thing that sustains itself in the way that stand-up comedy does through the sheer force and the flow of the comedian's voice. That's the thing that gets you a comedian past that bad joke. But At any rate, why stand-up comedy? Why the stand-up comedy routine? Why did you decide to do that as the sort of the narrative form? Because I can't think of very many other examples of anything like it.
Why? I think that when I was, and this is kind of inside baseball because Kurt and I have talked about this for a long, long time. Not this particular thing, but this book. So he kind of knows what I'm going to say, I think. The story I wanted to tell, I didn't know how else I was going to do it without that, the immediacy of that medium. Like you said, it's voice, and it's 100%. It's voice and its character and its style and its cadence and its rhythm and its pacing. And that's what I've always admired about comedy is that every word has to be in a certain area, and it's designed to get to elicit a specific response, and I didn't know personally how else I could do that, and I admire, like when you were saying about just the force of barreling through a bad joke. I wouldn't know about bad jokes, but I'm assuming that if one were to have a bad joke, this would help them. Me not having them would be. This is where you laugh, Kurt. Say, it's a good one. All right. Anyway, but that's kind of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of it.
When ordinarily watching a stand-up comedian, one doesn't get a sense that there's any depth. What you get more of a sense of what's behind the scene in terms of the comedian's shtick, his act, is a bunch of joke writers. But with this guy, there's a sense not only that there's a kind of personal depth behind his joke making, but that there's something really dark back there that he's going to tell us about without telling us about it. He's going to deliver.
That was the most important part, because if I were to sit and say, that's interesting to me, that's interesting when you're reading something and it's not what you realize that there's more to it than what you think. Like this could be, and this has been, as you know, has been it's been challenging the fact that it's hard for, that's silly, but it's not considered legitimate. Like this isn't considered this style, this format, and I think it is. Like I think it is. And I think that and it's accessible too, because if I were to tell a story in any other way, I don't think I could tell it as clearly. And moreover, if I were reading a story, not necessarily it needs to be funny or anything like that, but voice is very important to me, right? So
yeah, as it should be. What the reader may not imagine is that what is a good part of what is behind the facade of the storyteller, joke maker, comedian is actually rather autobiographical for you.
How so?
Yeah, right. I'll tell you. Would you care to talk about
the hell of a way to find out? I mean, I had no idea.
I didn't pass this question with him, so he may not be willing to
folks, give me a second.
Dirty details.
This is a lot to process. It is. Well, and all right, there are a lot of autobiographical elements. I did do that. I renovated a movie theater. I went bankrupt. I got divorced. I took a bunch of people hostage. I didn't take any, but I did all those things. That happened. And at the time when all these things were happening, the thing that kept me going, the thing that kept me from just completely succumbing was that I always thought, describe how this feels. Like, how do you feel right now? I mean, and it was bad. It was bad. And that whole time I'm like, I took hope in the fact that like, there's a word for this. You know what I mean? Whatever's good, whatever this is, there's a word for it. And I got to figure out a way to get that out. Right. And much like the renovation of the theater was a big it was a large undertaking because I thought, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this, right? Well, how am I supposed to, where do you start? And then you just start. So I just started writing, and it came out. And as I was telling the story, it came out like that. It came out in the form, and I thought, well, that I hadn't heard it either. I thought, well, that's so I tried doing that, and the more, and a lot of it, I mean, this is a hyper actual, it's not me, but there are elements. What the narrator tries to do is piece things together, right? He tries to take different, everything is chaos, and he is desperately, in any way he knows, trying to cobble some sort of meaning out of that chaos. And what's more, he's trying to share it, right? He's not just saying it. He's not just doing this to himself. He wants you to get this too. And he so desperately wants to do it. And so I thought, like, and that, if I can, how do you get that feeling of desperation, right? And just this absolute, and you're looking at this guy going, oh my God, please stop it. But he's not gonna.
Yeah, it's like, the plot is that he's waiting for the police to come because he's got hostages in there. But there is something that the narrator and perhaps even the author fears, is that if he stops talking, he'll go unhinged. If he stops talking, if he stops making the jokes, once the patter stops, it'll all fall apart.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing kind of narrative tension. Once you get it, once you get the idea that this guy is talking, telling jokes, because if he stops, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That is it.
Yeah. And that's a hell of a conceit for a novel.
I mean, yes, it is. And it would be great if I just plucked that out of the fucking thin air. That would be super. But no, that would, Hitchcock said, like, all of his movies, all his films, he's like, I just wanted to get the viewer to feel a certain thing, suspense, or I wanted them to be scared, I wanted them to be something. Like, this is the whole thing. So everything that was leading up to this, right? This was not incidental, but this is just a mechanism for me to get you to feel like that. And so I thought, well, how do I do that? Have a bunch of something like North by Northwest. Like,
MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It's a real novel. It has absolutely. So we're strung along with this comedian, and the real story is about anything but.
And he's like, that's what I really want to do. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do this. I want to tell this story that sort of, you think it's something and then it's something else. And that was all.
Another thing that I really love and admire about the book is that the majority of the book is this mad and almost always entertaining patter, this chatter of the comedian. But every once in a while, it's almost as if it were upholstery that had, those tacks in it, those buttons that hold the fabric of the story down. There's 4 or 5 moments in the story when it becomes not dark, but it becomes very sad. And the way that you balance those two things is remarkable. So I was wondering if you would you mind reading something from the book that's a little darker, that isn't so manic?
Yeah. And I'll read this first. This is short. It's a chapter called "The Fixing of a Broken Thing."
So set the scene a little bit for us.
Oh, hell, I don't even know what this is.
You don't even know what it is.
This is halfway through his. Yeah, this is halfway through his rant. This is halfway through, and you'll see. I mean, this will. I guarantee it'll all make sense. Okay. So no, yeah. So that's my New Year's resolution. That's what I'm gonna do. Like I resolve to do that. Whatever I was talking about before. I declare and I resolve. And I say I declare sometimes like an old Southern gentleman, like an old cartoon chicken. I say I declare like that. I have a fat friend who says I declare. He says that because he's fat. You see, man. He likes eclairs. He likes to eat them. That's not nice, is it? I'm alienating you, aren't I? This isn't relatable anymore, is it? I can add though. I can add to this. Let me think. Scratch his head, scratch his belly. Okay, let me throw this at you, man. I remember I think ex-wife and I were going to couples therapy, and what happened? Looks around, startled, looks around, alarmed. Why am I doing this? This is what I'm doing? Looking around. And no, we're going to couples therapy right before we're going to get divorced. We were getting divorced. It was done. That decision was made. But the court said, before you do that, you have to do this. You have to go to this couples therapy, marriage counseling type thing. We had to do this. And to me, and I'm really just thinking about this right now, man, thinking out loud, and that's why I'm laughing. To me, when you're going to get a divorce and the court says, yeah, before you do that, you've got to go sit with your soon-to-be ex and talk about everything another time. And you do, you go and you dredge up all these awful feelings and horrible things about your marriage. And it's awful and brutal and painful and horrible. That's the same thing as when a pregnant woman goes in to get an abortion. They make her get an ultrasound and listen to it and look at it. Like at this point, we're just trying to shame you, Isn't that what this seems like, man? Right? Like we're just trying to hurt your feelings and make you feel bad. We're piling on. We're morbidly obese. We don't really expect something to happen, right? Some change, some reconciliation, some fixing of a broken thing. No, we're just like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to stick this to you. Wow, that is so mean. Anyway, that happened. My, I guess, ex-wife and I did this, and who knows what happened. Like we're not getting into or going into any details or specifics here, but all I know is I didn't really get to say a lot of stuff. And my ex-wife cried and screamed a lot. That much I do know and can say happened. And we were still living together at that time, like in the same house. And we were getting ready to leave. And the therapist said, do you have any questions? The therapist said, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, I have a question. What do I do now? And she said, well, you can work on your listening and being a better this and that. And I said, no. What am I supposed to do now? Like right now? Like we're going to leave here. You're going to say goodbye and maybe see you next week. And we're going to get in a car together. She and I are. She's going to be next to me. I'm going to be driving and it will be cold and night outside. And what am I supposed to do now? What do I do now? Right now, not in some vague future where I work on my whatever. What about right now? Like, what do I do? Do I look at her? Shake her hand? Do I cry? Do I say, I know, I'm sorry. If only I would have. Maybe we still can. What do I do? I need to know this. This is important. And I need to know things like this. I can't worry about being a more receptive person. I mean, I'm not saying I don't need to be or anything. I'm saying that is so far down the line from what I'm talking about. I'm talking about now. Like, what do I do now in the next 5 seconds? This is what I asked him. This was the only thing that could help me. This was the only thing I wanted to know. And she couldn't answer that question, man. She did not know. And it's so quiet.
Bravo.
That's sad. I was reading, I told you, Kurt Irwin, thank you.
The thing that really moves me about that moment in the novel is that at that point, it transcends any autobiographical content and becomes universal. It's sort of like, I know that moment.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that moment. So and at any rate, congratulations for that.
Thank you. That's what and hope what I wanted, hopefully I thought by this point, not this particular scene, but like you were saying, there's, pockets of real sentimentality and emotion and sadness in this thing. And I wanted to sort of space that out so that you would go, hold on a second. Maybe I'm going to go back and look at, this is only 100 and some pages long. It's not that big. So you go back and you say, oh, wait a minute. So maybe this wasn't just,
right,
jokes, clarity and stuff like that.
Yeah, it does that. It makes the reader sort of turn around and look back and say, how did I get to this point?
Yeah.
And do I need to look at all that stuff back there again? It becomes really a kind of metonymy for life, for everybody's private life, where they get to a certain point and they have a realization and then they look back and they say, do I have to rethink and reconsider all of that?
Yeah.
It's exhausting. At any rate,
Yeah.
well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And we're ready. Are we ready? We're ready to turn this back over.
Turn it back over.
That was great, Ben.
Thank
That- good. I mean, I'll just say about it, your book, obviously very much in keeping with Dalkey's tradition of, formal innovation in literature. That's the neat thing. The range of books we've talked about tonight is wide. And what they have in common is, an experimental nature, a willingness to try new things, new ways to get under people's skin. And yours certainly does that. I can't think of anyone. The only sort of stand-up comedy routine in books that I remember is in DeLillo's Underworld. He's got a sort of recreation of a Lenny Bruce bit, which is brave to do, as yours is, because the thing is, you got to be funny if you're going to pretend to be a stand-up comic.
Mhm.
You got to be both a really good writer and a good joke maker. So well done on that. I will.
I will say there's also one of my other favorite Dalkey titles from kind of recently is a public reading followed by a discussion by Danielle
I read that.
memoir.
Right.
Yeah, which is not
Right.
stand-up comedy, but it is very much in terms of author events and public readings. It is very spot on. It's great.
Liddy Salvera's the lecture is the same way too.
Yeah.
But this is funnier, right? And we can all agree on that. Nice.
Can I be the basic bitch who points out how amazing the cover art is?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you have any
Oh,
doing
nothing
it?
to do with it.
It's amazing.
It is. It really is.
I
I
mean,
had nothing to do with it.
booksellers always, it's
Oh
a
no,
lot.
it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, we always judge the books by their covers.
Like,
Sorry.
You should. What else can you judge it by?
Yeah.
Like, title and cover. I'm like that. I'd buy it based on that.
Uh-huh.
You don't need to read it.
That cover alone should make it a pretty easy sell. Congratulations on that, Chad.
It's great.
Amazing cover. As soon as I saw it, I said, man.
I'm in.
Is that a good chance, since we brought Chad up? This might be a good chance to kick it over to you, Chad Post, editor-in-chief of the newly reworked Dalkey corporate power structure, the man who knows where the bodies are buried. What can you tell us about? We've heard about the past. We've heard about Ben. One of your current authors. What's coming down the pike?
Yeah, this is going to be fairly general, but I'll give you like a brief overview of where things are and where they're going. So as Kurt mentioned, John died unexpectedly 2 years ago, almost like just like two years and a couple weeks ago, almost to the day. And we have been sort of sorting through things for a while. So, and sort of planning behind the scenes as to how to like bring John's vision, continue the vision of Dalkey Archive, continue being able to accomplish the mission that John set out to do of keeping these great books available for future generations, finding interesting and innovative authors from around the world, and being able to create an audience or find an audience for them. So going forwards, we've sort of broken things down into like 3-4 sort of sections that are just the books part of Dalkey Archive. Because one thing, if you knew John at all, the one thing that's like very true, aside from pissing people off wherever he might be, is that he was overly ambitious. There's a million ideas, a million possible things they wanted to do, new ideas every few weeks, like new schemes that could be very large, very small, but they're always like new ideas, new, bigger approaches. So looking at just the books though, we've sort of broken things down into one section, which we referred to, or you referred to earlier as the Dalkey Essentials, which are books from Dalkey's backlist that are being reissued for a new readership with new introductions in most cases, ebooks for the first time ever, and to bring these excellent, amazing books that were part of like John's vision and editorial dream back to a new set of readers and booksellers who may not have ever encountered them. Like I know that you have, and Spencer, you have, but like there are a lot of people that it just sort of things from 20 years ago are brand new today, right? To like a great group of people. And before John passed, one of the things he talked about was the idea that of maybe theoretically conceiving of Dalkey Archive as a publisher that is like 1,000 backlist books that stay in print forever, constantly like rotating through moments in time in which they reach the right group of readers. So the Essentials is kind of being part of that. So we have like a couple John Barth books in there. We have Natalie Sorrow's The Planetarium, which came out, Eros the Bittersweet, which was mentioned earlier. The one that I'm proofing right now is Point Counterpoint, the Aldous Huxley book. And I have never felt like this. I hate saying shit like this, but that feels more prescient now than I ever thought it would. Like, it's been 22 years since I read it. And now I'm like, whoa, hold up. Like, this is like spot on how these sort of like pro-fascist sort of groups come into being, and like this sort of materialistic nature of the art world. It's wonderful. It's very, very, very wonderful. But these are books that otherwise had been kind of lost to time. And so we're bringing those back and keeping those alive. The second part, the second line, are the books like Ben's that are like the new books that are coming out from new voices, interesting, experimental, fun, innovative, challenging, enjoyable voices from around the world. But especially in terms of the American authors that we're doing, the 4 first books that were all American original writers, Ben's represents a lot of like the voice of Dalkey. So we mentioned Stanley Crawford came up earlier. It's a very voice-driven author. Curtis is also a very voice-driven author in a slightly different way, not as stand-up comedian, but like a little sarcastic comedian, fun, poking fun and enjoying things, and has his books like Requiem in particular is very fun and very voice-driven, and everyone should check that out as well. So I'm going to plug that. But Ben's book very much fits into that Dalkey tradition of finding that special, unique, voice-driven narrative. And then we have like people like Emily Hall, who's doing things with style and syntax and playing with how the sentences get made and how meaning gets made out of this repetition. You have Ashton Politanov, who's playing around with like the form of using newspapers in a more Olympian sort of sense of things. And then Dash Carrera is the other American writer that's coming out as part of the new Dalkey line. And Dash's book is very much like formally experimental, set up almost like a 2 sides of a record, various tracks, layering of things, like almost like an experimental music composition. All of those go back through all of Dalkey's history, which Curtis knows and has like helped guide in so many ways. Like, you look back at like the books that John published in the time that he was at Illinois State and that they were looking into, they were being featured in the magazine Context and in the Review of Contemporary Fiction. And they are all representative of these sort of trends of how to tell a story, how form can influence narrative, how those 2 elements interact, form and content, and create like a something that's like beyond just trying to be mimetic in a sort of neoclassical way. And so Dalkey's trying to continue that as well. At the same time, being able to do books in translation from around the world, especially the different like series that have been started and have a certain number of books in them, and a certain number of authors who over the past 5-6 years have, you know, become superstars within their home countries. Romina Buzarova is one that's from North Macedonia, and she is amazing. Her book, My Husband, came out from Dalkey some years ago, and you all should check that out. It's a great collection of short stories, but I'm Not Going Anywhere is her new collection of short stories that's coming out in, I don't know, March or April. Absolutely brilliant, sharp, satirical, very funny, very strongly feminist, very enjoyable. She's a good example of that brand of like John's vision and the Dalkey vision as well, whatever that might mean. And we'll continue doing some scholarly books. And at some point in 2023 is next year, we hope to be able to relaunch some sort of, I don't want to make it sound like it's a lit hub thing, but some sort of connection between like 3% Context, the Review of Contemporary Fiction, the podcast, and have a space in which there is a educational and sort of contextual component to like what we're doing and what we're publishing, which I think was something that John was always very interested in, is creating that context. So you don't have these books just coming out into a void, but if you're interested in them, you can find guides, you can find essays, you can find information from like interesting authors writing about these people and giving you an entryway to them. So the books are alive and not just like they come out and they're just on the shelf, but like, how do you engage with Jan Fosse, for instance, and make that going forward? So that's like a big part of the overall big mission. How do we do it with like 3 people? I don't know. That part's a tough part. You guys have to bear with us. The timing is slow. Printing is horrible. Everything costs money, but like we're getting there. There's a vision and there is a system. I will caveat give one excuse for everything, is that anything that needs to be printed, we need to scan in, OCR it, proof it, retypeset it, and print it. So everything that's taking a while, like Miss Macintosh, My Darling, is because that is 1,800 pages of scanned in text that has to be proofed multiple times and redesigned into a format that some printer can actually print and actually has paper for. So I don't know. You guys ask any questions that you might. Oh, I guess you can ask, or you can ask questions. You can't.
Yeah, people can ask questions in the Q&A, and I'm more than happy to monitor that and read questions out loud.
Yeah, please do. If anyone has any questions for anyone, Ben, Curtis, Chad, I mean, I don't know why you'd have questions for us, but throw those at us while we're still here.
I will say that, yeah, like Chad, what you were saying about reprints, I think I just want to emphasize, I think are so important. I mean, the reason why I think the average turnover for, a bookseller is probably like 3 to 5 years, if not shorter. And so at least for people who are like on the ground, like selling those books, I mean, reprints are important, and to get those books out on the front table again and to have people rediscover them is vital.
As a question, how many of you have read Point Counterpoint by Aldous Huxley? 2. Yeah, and like that, it's from like 1928. It was one of the 100 best books of the century, according to like that famous list that had Ulysses at the top. The like sort of, I keep referring to it as a Random House list, but I know that's wrong. Modern library list. But like that was on there. It's like an incredibly influential book, but like also, yeah, most people haven't seen it, not because it's not good, but because it's just not in the eye of the marketplace at that moment in time. Also, like Memoirs of My Father Watching TV would make a great Dalkey essential book.
Good point. That's having been around books. I've been around books long enough now that things that I read can now be resuscitated, which is see, not just 1928 Aldous Huxley, but things that I remember being kind of new are now, classics that can be rejuvenated.
We have a few questions coming in. Erica Sanborn asks, Chad, what is your most anticipated re-release and/or new release in the US for 2023?
That's like an impossible question that you're asking me right now. Re-release, ooh, oh God. There's so many, and there's so many great books, but I'll go with the one that's coming out next year that I'm most excited about in terms of the essentials has to be Mulligan's Stew by Gilbert Sorrentino. That book is amazing. That book is funny. That book is body. That book is meta everything and is absolutely wonderful. In terms of like the new books that are coming out at that point in time, one of them that's been recently is off to print and that you may have seen some buzz about is The Garden of Seven Twilights by Miguel de Pujol, which is a wild, like very Cameronian sort of tale set in like a futuristic post-apocalyptic world in which people are stuck in like a sort of like Swiss Alps, like fancy, too fancy to make sense within the real world sort of place, and are telling stories to each other that interlock and go through like a fugue state. There's a new Michael Ibis book coming out that you mentioned him, that's called Journey to the South, which Journey to the South is absolutely spectacular. So if anyone likes Thomas Pynchon or stories upon stories, so like anything that is that kind of embedded story sort of narrative, Journey to the South is like crack cocaine. It is so good, and it starts with like a murder that happens during a dramatic representation of Kant's work, and then because of that murder, it leads through a series of different things until it truly makes sense as like how all these like random coincidences in storytelling came together. So I highly recommend that too. That's great. Very great.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that one. I had on my list of, when I presented a list of things that would come up tonight, that was the IVAs that I threw in there. So I'm really excited about that. And you guys are not making it easy on yourself. Garden, like Antagony, like Miss Macintosh. How
many people have seen Antagony?
Oh yeah, I actually just saw a copy on our floor yesterday, and it's big. It's very big.
We have 3 copies on our floor. It is huge.
That's all.
Or you're just bragging,
right?
I am bragging. Yes, I am.
Chad's gone to get a hand truck to bring us a copy to show us.
Yeah,
this book,
oh my God.
It's like, it's as big as can be. I edited the like second half of this all in Madrid like a year and a half ago.
Oh my God.
Going through, and it was like unbelievable because it's such an interesting and amazing work of genius. It's also like so dense, so different in each section. Everything's like really woven together. And I kept going out and meeting with these various Spanish authors and publishers they work with, and they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" It's like, basically, I'm on like a 2-week trip to like just work on this book and to edit. And they're like, "Oh, Antagony, that book is amazing. None of us have read it. None of us have finished it. It's too long." It's like, yeah, no, I'm fucking aware it's too fucking long. This book, which is over 1,100 pages long, is the exact same size as the book that was holding my computer up so I didn't look so funny. That is only 700 pages.
Wow.
If you're wondering why your other favorite books can't get reprinted this year, it's because you guys have all the paper.
We sent that in to print in April, and it came back in the middle of October.
Oh my God. Chad, I feel like around this time last year, you're trying to crowdsource people to copy edit Miss Macintosh, My Darling, for you.
Yeah, there's been very
How'd that work?
Very very sad. I'm happy to have people. I'm happy to still do that, but like it's been having to go through like a typesetting nightmare and figuring out how many pages you can actually get bound anywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is there is a true limit, and you got to figure that. Yeah, get it to fit.
Have you considered releasing it in 3 volumes?
I know. No, I know. I consider releasing it in 6 volumes, but no one was in my. I thought it would be cool to do it in like 6 little, like a series, one every month for a year. And you could just like read along and basically be like, as fast as we can proof and lay it out and make sure that it's clean, it would be coming out for you.
Erica says, are you printing in the US, Chad?
Yeah. Maybe that's the problem.
There's one other question here for Ben about the narrator of your book, who is not described or named. And they wonder, can you provide any visual of what they look like and what their name is? It says, I imagine the name Clue or Larry or Doe.
What does the narrator look like?
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought of that, what he would look like. There's a part in there where he says that he's very good looking. So if those people
is
are good,
autobiographical.
It's certainly that's the part that wasn't. Yeah, that Larry, Clue, and Doe sound like good looking fellas. So maybe one of those guys. No, I don't know.
That's
Probably like Doe, I would say. If I had to pick one of those 3, that sounds right.
good. That's anyone else have queries? Anyone on the panel here or in the audience want to throw something out about? Well, I think we're good then. I appreciate all of you for being here, all the booksellers, Chad, Curtis, Ben. Thanks for all you're doing. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad to just sit around and talk about all these fantastic books that don't get enough attention, and hopefully we've shined a light on at least some of them. This is just a sliver of what's available from Dalkey. The re-releases of the essentials will bring new attention, but the older books too that are still in print and still available. So sift through the catalog on their website and you'll be amazed at what's out there. So yeah, again, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to do something like this again sometime.
Thank you.
Good night,
Yeah,
everyone.
would love to. Yeah. Hey,
Thank you, Ben.
everyone.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you for everyone
Thank you.
setting this up too. It's amazing.
Thank you.
It's good to see both of you.